Well, greetings to my friends at Iron Sharpens Iron. So grateful for what you do. I believe you're on the front lines of the kingdom. And here's why. A few months ago, I was speaking at a gathering of men, about 500 guys in the room, and I asked the question, how many of you were discipled by your dad? 3 hands went up out of 500. Houston, we have a problem. We have biological fathers who don't really know what it means to be a spiritual father, and we have men who don't really know what it means to be a man of God. And that's the heartbeat behind Play the Man, and I believe that's why what you're doing is so important. And this is not a footnote or a minor note. In fact, the last verse of the Old Testament, it's almost like the last hope, the last prayer is that God would turn the hearts of the fathers to the children and the hearts of the children to the fathers. And then John the Baptist says the exact same thing. So it's the last note of the Old Testament, the first note of the New Testament. And that's why I believe this is the heartbeat of God, and you're right at the heart of the kingdom. My prayer is that God would raise up a generation of men who understand what it means to be a man of God. So I've written 15 books over the last 10 years, and each one of them is pretty near and dear to my heart, but Play the Man is in a category by itself, and part of it is because it's probably the most personal book I've written, because it really is me as a dad with 3 children, and I waited many years to write it because I wanted to watch my children kind of go through their growth curve and be able to disciple my 2 sons so that I could share some of those stories in the book. Here's a little bit of my heart. At the end of the day, I want to be famous in my home. That's what matters to me. Success is when those who know you best respect you most. And that's my wife and my children. I love pastoring, I love authoring, but I love being a husband and being a father to my 3 children. And at the end of the day, I think that is the end game. I thank God for youth pastors, but it's not their job to disciple my children. That's my job as a father. So here's maybe a story and a little bit of a framing of Play the Man. In the middle of the 2nd century, there was a bishop by the name of Polycarp. He was the bishop of Smyrna. According to church tradition, he was actually discipled by the Apostle John. So go and read the letter to the church at Smyrna. Polycarp would have heard John's voice in his head when John said, "Be faithful even to the point of death." And it was prophetic because Polycarp was arrested for his faith, brought into the Colosseum, told to recant his faith. And he said, 86 years have I served him. How can I revile my Christ now? And he takes a stand for faith, in part because he hears a voice from heaven. Now, this story is recorded in Fox's Book of Martyrs, and this voice from heaven says, "Be strong, Polycarp, play the man." And that's what he does to the point of death. And I believe he sets an example, and that one sacrifice has a tremendous impact on the early church. Now, I don't think many of us will be called to die for our faith, but what does it mean to play the man? That's what this book is about. I talk about 7 virtues of manhood, from tough love to willpower, and several in between, and really lay a foundation for what that looks like. Of course, Jesus is the prototype and sets the standard, sets the example for all 7 of those virtues. And then when readers get to the second half of the book, that's really where I try to bare my soul and share as much as I can of what I've learned as a father. I believe that discipling our sons is the key to the gospel reaching the next generation. And so I share about a rite of passage, a discipleship covenant with a physical challenge, mental challenge, spiritual challenge, and I outline those. I actually share the covenant in the book, and in fact, I have a downloadable copy at playtheman.com because I want to put as many tools as I can into others' dads' hands. Now, I know that process is going to look as unique as their children. In fact, it was very different for my two sons because they're very different. But at the end of that process, I took them through a rite of passage. We had a manhood ceremony. I happened to do it between the age of 12 and 13. But I try to share as many stories and as many examples to just put those tools into the hands of fathers to help them walk through that process. Can I share one of my life goals? And it's this: to help 1 million dads disciple their sons. In that regard, I know that we have the same hope, the same prayer, the same goal. And so a joy for me to be able to share this book with you. I hope and pray that it would be an encouragement to you personally. And I just want to say once again, thanks for what you do, for who you are, for being at the front lines of the kingdom. I believe if we can reach this generation of men, we can reach the world for Christ. And so thank you. God bless you. Play the man.